Congressman Wesley Bell didn't waste his time with pleasantries. When he walked into that chamber, he walked in with one mission: to hold a mirror up to power and ask what kind of leadership we really honor in this country. And at the heart of it all was a number that made jaws drop: $45 million. Not for soldiers' housing, not for fixing the barracks that mold every summer and freeze every winter, not for hiring teachers so military kids don't fall behind. No, this staggering sum was set aside for a parade, a one-day show of spectacle while troops and their families struggle with the basics. That's why Bell's words cut like a knife. Leadership, he said, isn't measured by confetti. It's measured by commitment.
Introduced a bill on the House floor a few days ago, a resolution standing against terror, racism, hate, anti-Semitism, which as an American, as a black man, I'm gonna stand against those things 6 times a week, twice on Sunday. Now, the nefarious part was there was a line that was stuck at the end of that resolution that essentially gave a shout out to law enforcement, which I do support, but also to ICE, which right now, a lot of Americans have a problem with the way ICE is being deployed. And I'm not happy with what they're doing, nor do I want to shout them out for that. And so accountability was, I didn't duck from the question. I went and I talked to my constituents. I went on social media. I did interviews to explain exactly where I stood, that I stand against hate. I stand against racism. I stand against anti-Semitism. And I hate that that line was stuck in there. That's accountability. So when we're asking you these questions and you're ducking and you're not answering them directly, that's not a culture of a war. What was the term? A war ethos, a warrior ethos. I'm looking at members who serve, and they're taking their lead from you. That starts with you. And if we have troops who are in war zones and they're watching while they're risking their lives, and you can't just answer some tough questions, what kind of culture is that setting? So, as a prosecutor, when I think about what's happening in California and around the country with ICE, it's not only dangerous and unconstitutional, but it raises serious public safety concerns because we have people with masks that are going around saying that they're ICE, and we've had reports of that, saying that they're ICE and committing crimes. And that's a big problem. But it gets me back to the point of the accountability piece. So, for example, do you believe quality military housing is important? Yes or no? And just keep your mic on for time, because I don't only have a minute left.
Our budget commits to robust military housing and barracks upgrades.
Do you believe military children deserve a strong education?
Our budget funds strong education, and we hope more educational choices for military.
Love it. Is it a priority to provide real, reliable care to our veterans?
Of course.
So, Mr. Secretary, we have a problem here because your answers don't match your budget priorities. You said your mission is to restore this warrior ethos and that threats we face are serious, but so must our investments. So when we think of, for example, a $45 million parade, I can think of 45 million things we could do more effectively with $45 million than a parade, such as the things that I mentioned: military housing, military children's education, providing reliable care for our veterans. All of these things would be higher on the priority than a parade. And so the parade, and when we talk about showing strength, we're not talking about theater. We're not talking about showmanship. We're talking about things that actually make our military more lethal and keeps us safer. And so what I'm saying is that in my limited time left is accountability does matter, and this body cares about what our military.
From the beginning, the confrontation wasn't about party politics or slogans. It was about accountability. Bell listened as Pete Hegseth dodged pointed questions, circling back to familiar talking points, evading the heart of the issue. And then Bell pressed in. Accountability, he reminded the room, isn't optional. It's the first principle of a warrior ethos. A private in combat doesn't get to ignore the hard questions. A sergeant on deployment doesn't get to duck responsibility when the stakes are life or death. So why should leaders at the top, those demanding sacrifice from others, get a pass when their own choices are under scrutiny? The chamber grew still because everyone knew the truth in his words. Then Bell laid out the $45 million decision in stark terms. Not for live fire ranges, not for cyber defense, not for the training simulators that keep pilots sharp or the water lines that crack under base housing. Instead, millions were set aside for a parade, a fleeting moment of pageantry. Bell's argument was brutally simple. For the cost of one parade, the nation could replace unsafe barracks, add counselors to overbooked clinics, expand childcare so parents can actually serve, or upgrade outdated gear. That's not theory, it's reality. And Bell made sure everyone in the room felt that weight. But Bell didn't stop with budgets and line items. He brought it down to the human level, the lives that get pushed into the margins when leaders choose optics over outcomes. He described the soldier who comes home from a second deployment to find his child's school still short on teachers. The family forced to drive nearly an hour every day because housing on base is backlogged for another year. The spouse applying for jobs in towns they never chose, uprooted again and again by mandatory moves. These aren't abstractions, they're the invisible burdens military families live with daily. And Bell made sure the hearing room had no way to look away. Hegseth tried to shield himself in words, pride, honor, warrior ethos. But Bell dismantled the rhetoric piece by piece. Symbolism matters, he said, but without substance it's nothing more than costume jewelry. The true measure of ethos doesn't come from a flyover or a marching band. It lives in the barracks that don't make soldiers sick, in the schools that don't shortchange their students, in the clinics that don't force veterans to wait months for an appointment. You don't prove strength with a parade, Bell said, his voice calm but cutting. You prove it by how you care for your people after the parade is over. The contrast was undeniable. Then came the moment that stripped away the last layer of defense. Budgets, Bell declared, are moral documents. They reveal priorities more clearly than speeches ever could. And so he asked simple questions, the kind that leave no wiggle room. Should military families have safe housing? Yes. Do their children deserve strong schools? Of course. Do veterans need reliable care? Absolutely. And then the dagger: if all of those answers are yes, then why does this budget rank a parade above them all? There was no clean way out, because numbers don't lie. They don't spin. They tell the truth about what leaders value. But Bell wasn't content to stop at the military ledger. He connected the dots to something larger, a culture of dodging responsibility. He pointed to the disturbing reports of masked individuals pretending to be ICE agents, using fear to commit crimes. Accountability isn't just a military term, he said, it's a principle of governing. And when leaders look away, when they brush aside tough questions or hide behind patriotic language, it's ordinary people who pay the price, whether they wear the uniform or not. The soldier's family, the immigrant family, the families no one throws parades for. As Hegseth leaned on one last defense, that a parade would unite the nation, Bell delivered his sharpest rebuke. Unity, he said, isn't rented for a Saturday afternoon. It's built day by day in the choices we make. In stable housing, in dependable schedules, in reliable health care, in schools that don't lose teachers to burnout. If the military is a promise, Bell said, then the budget is the proof. And if that proof doesn't line up, then it's not unity, it's a facade. Soldiers can't dodge reality at mile marker 43 of a convoy. Families can't dodge reality when the rent comes due. So leaders shouldn't be allowed to dodge reality either, not with patriotic catchphrases, not with glossy press releases. As the final minutes approached, Bell asked the question that still echoes: what message do we want every young soldier, every petty officer, every Marine or airman to hear? That once a year we'll stage a parade in their honor, or that every single day we will choose their well-being over political theater? The answer should be obvious, but it isn't easy, because it requires leaders to trade applause for accountability, spotlight moments for sustained commitments. Leadership, Bell concluded, isn't what you show on camera. It's what your people know they can rely on when the cameras are gone. He closed where he started, with values. A fresh coat of paint can cover a crack for a day, but only real investment prevents the collapse. A parade may stir pride for an evening, but genuine care builds strength that lasts. Budgets, Bell insisted, are promises, and broken promises don't disappear, they fall on someone else's shoulders. On the specialist living in unsafe housing, on the parent fighting for a childcare slot, on the veteran waiting months for an appointment. For them, the choice between parades and people isn't theoretical, it's lived every day. So Bell left the chamber with a challenge, not just for Hegseth, but for the country. If we truly care about security, about responsibility, about those who serve, then the path is clear. Choose people over pageantry, choose substance over spectacle, every time. And if that message resonates with you, if you believe budgets should reflect real values, not political optics, then share it. Start the conversation, because the next hearing won't be about confetti, it will be about whether this country is finally ready to fund the future that service members and their families deserve.